Okay, the 2021 Acer Nitro 5 with the Ryzen 5600H and RTX 3060. My first takeaway after using this for the last 2 weeks is the build quality is definitely seems better. Feels sturdy. I would be comfortable carrying this around in my backpack to class every day or whatever. It definitely seems sturdier than last year. And to make sure that wasn't in my head, I went to my local Best Buy where they still have them on display, last year's models, and they were as flimsy as I remember. And of course, that still could be the case with the, for whatever reason, they're still selling the 1650 models new this year. Those could still maybe be a step down in quality from this one. Now, as far as ports on this guy, we got 3 USB ports, a USB-C for data transfer only, Ethernet port, and a headset jack. On the back here is where our power adapter goes in, and the little red accents, the only signs that this is a gaming laptop. You can see the lid is a fingerprint magnet. Now, with the included 180-watt charger, it's just a little over 6 pounds when I weighed it. Speaking of the charger, my only complaint is that when you put it in there, you think it's in, but you actually need to give it another little push. And I know that this is the charger and not the laptop because when I used the charger that came with my Acer Predator, it doesn't. I don't have this problem. Taking a look at the included NitroSense software, you have power plan settings. The power saver will cut the performance of the laptop in half when gaming, but of course also make your fan significantly quieter. Balanced and high performance, I didn't notice any difference in behavior between those two. You have fan control, you can set them to auto, max, or custom. The custom control is kind of pseudo control, as in if you are gaming with it and it needs to increase the fan speed to prevent thermal throttling, it will. You have control of your 4-zone RGB keyboard. You can a couple different kind of your standard settings. So the 3060 in this is up to 95 watts total power with dynamic boost. When you get yours, take a look at NVIDIA control panel and see if it says 85 watts, there's a BIOS update you need to download. I had to do that, and to be honest, I didn't really notice any difference in behavior or power delivery before and after downloading the update. One question I've gotten twice in the comments that I've never gotten before this year is about the RAM timings. And if we check Zen timings, we can see that included RAM timings are good. And actually, if you watch my Legion 5 video, you can see that at 1080p, this actually comes close in performance to the Legion 5 with the nerfed RAM. Response time on the 144 Hz screen felt acceptable to me while using it. Um, 270 nits, the brightness was okay for me, even like in using it in the sunlight. But if we look at the color accuracy, that's where things definitely get kind of bad. Only 54% sRGB, 47% Adobe RGB. It's not super noticeable while you're using it, but if I put it side by side, for example, with my Predator that has 99% sRGB, it definitely becomes more noted. The colors definitely look washed out. To test the battery life on the 58 watt hour battery, first I played City Skylines, set to the balanced power profile, and it lasted for 71 minutes. Taking it off AC and switching to battery power resulted in about a 50% drop in performance of the laptop. For my next test, I switched it to power saver mode and the screen to 60 Hz. I streamed a YouTube video at 720p and it lasted for 3 hours and 2 minutes. The fans on the laptop, during normal use, like you can see right here, I've got a ton of browser tabs open, even a YouTube video going, or aren't audible. If we set the fans to 50%, we get close to around 47, 48 decibels. And then turning them up to max, we'll hit around 58 decibels. Although that 50% range is normally where they stay while gaming. There is definitely a little bit of audible, of a whine, kind of a coil whine noise in my opinion. And the only other annoying thing I kind of noticed about the fans is after you finish playing a game and temperatures have returned to normal, it still kind of takes them a while to settle back down. To check thermals and look for any throttling during gaming, I let Far Cry 5 idle for 2 hours because it's a game that really stresses both the graphics and CPU card. And we can see around 80 degrees in the GPU and 91 degrees in the CPU is the point where the fans start to ramp up to try and keep it around there. And the fans are still only at around 70%. Playing Microsoft Flight Simulator with the graphics set to Ultra and the fan set on max, we see the temperatures in the CPU stay around 80 degrees and the GPU around 65, maybe up to 70 degrees. We switch it over to auto fans and fly for another hour. We see the GPU hit around 78 degrees and the CPU around that 90-degree mark, the fans at 50 decibels and around 60 to 70% of their max. Microsoft Flight Simulator is a great game for testing because all you have to do is get up to altitude, then you can put it on autopilot and get up and walk away and get a drink, just like a real pilot. Taking a look at our benchmark scores, if you're into that kind of thing, Time Spy score 7197 combined score. Up next is PC Mark, where our score was 7843. In Geekbench, we got a score, single core score of 1378, multi-core score of 6687. And in Cinebench R23, our single core score was 1093, our multi-core score was 8476. Now on to our gaming benchmarks in Call of Duty Warzone. Setting all the graphics to low, averaged around 110 frames per second. Putting all the graphics to high, with the exception of ray tracing, averaged around 100 frames per second. And when we turn ray tracing on, I got around 85 frames per second. Running my usual benchmark in Microsoft Flight Simulator, on high settings, I got about 37 frames per second. Switching all the frames to Ultra, saw around 27 frames per second. Running the Far Cry 5 benchmark at the highest settings, we got 91 frames per second. Shadow of the Tomb Raider built-in benchmark, 88 frames per second on the highest settings. If you're playing on an external monitor, you can expect about a 10% jump in frames per second. In Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we went up to 96, and Far Cry all the way up to 101. Our last game is Cyberpunk 2077. On high settings, averaged 90 frames per second. Ultra settings was 77. Putting ray tracing on medium, 57. And pumping the ray tracing all the way up to ultra was 52. And this was with DLSS set to balanced.
I miss my sister.
Well, my takeaways after using this for the last 2 weeks would be that build quality is decent, battery life is decent, it's on the lightweight side for a normal size gaming laptop, so it's going to be a good option if you need something portable to take to class or whatever. The temperatures on it are really good. In fact, they're a little too good. Acer definitely could have given more power to the 3060 in this, but it's gonna be able to run about any modern game at 1080p on the highest settings without a problem. The screen, while acceptable for gaming in my opinion, if you do want a super nice screen with really good color accuracy, I would look at something else. And while it's not a common feature on AMD laptops, since you don't get Thunderbolt, it would be really nice if it had USB-C charging. Alright, thanks so much for watching. If this video was helpful for you, please consider subscribing because they are a ton of work to make. Thank you all so much.